BHP is the world's largest mining company. Andrew Mackenzie is the CEO of BHP. Suffice to say, a big mind and a big job. The activist shareholder, Elliott of New York, regarded as one of the toughest of its kind and known for getting its way, wanted changes at BHP. But they found their match in BHP and Andrew Mackenzie. It really does seem that things haven't worked out quite as Elliott would have liked. To me, that says a lot, a huge amount, about BHP, led by CEO Andrew Mackenzie, our guest of honour today. What I can also say is that we are extremely fortunate to have such a highly skilled person with us today. And he is supported by some very successful investment funds, indeed big funds. One could also say he is a wily Scot with a high level of integrity. He has a background in a Bachelor of Geology and then gained a PhD in organic chemistry. He joined the oil company BP in 1983, the research division, then finance, then capital markets. In April 2004, he joined the Rio Tinto Group. In 2008, he became CEO of BHP Billiton. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Andrew Mackenzie.
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you, Lorraine. I've actually only been CEO since 2013, but maybe it feels like 10 years. But anyway, look, I acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, as always, from the Kulin Nation, pay my respect to their elders, both past and present, and with them I look forward to our shared future. Of course, I'm incredibly honoured to be your speaker at the 100th luncheon of this august body, the Melbourne Mining Club. Let me say it loud and say it clear, Melbourne is still at the centre of mining. Given I live here, that's important. And of course, it's just hosted a very successful IMARC. Most of you know that, and that stands for the International Mining and Resources Conference, a conference that goes from strength to strength. So much so that next year, it will be my great pleasure to welcome all the big mining CEOs to IMARC, so that we can hold our twice annual ICMM, that's the International Council of Mining and Metals. And we'll be holding it here at the heart of world mining in Melbourne. In 2001, it was Sir Arvi, welcome Sir Arvi, Sir Arvi Parbo, who's a giant of our industry and the former chairman of BHP, along at our table with Ken, our current chairman. But Harvey was the speaker, Sir Harvey was the speaker at the inaugural luncheon of this very successful club. It is a speech from another time. It occurred just in the aftermath of the collapse of the dot-com bubble. China was but a fledgling economy, and we had yet to experience the last mining boom. And Sir Harvey, I'm going to quote from you a couple of times in this speech, but starting off, one of the things that Sir Harvey says, that looking back over the last 50 years, in 2001, Sir Harvey said he had come to the conclusion that my ability to predict the future is minimal and that virtually nothing is impossible. Well, of course, I agree with you, Sir Harvey, because to predict the future is difficult. But, you know, I also disagree with you in a nice way, because we have to predict the future. Otherwise, we couldn't run our business. The mines that we operate have lifespans that stretch for decades, if not centuries. We make long-term investments, very long-term investments, in exploration, in production, and people, and they have to be grounded on our view of the long-term future. And it's a future that will not wait for us. We have to pull it towards us. And if, as Sir Harvey says, nothing is impossible, then everything is possible. So, of course, we must be open-minded and flexible, because transformational economic, social, and technological environmental change are surely upon us. And there are challenges there that we have to rise to and meet the possibilities they offer us as businessmen head on and women. So in order to succeed, we have to think in multi-generational terms, but as well as that, we must remain disciplined in all senses of the word, in the pursuit of our goals. Bring, of course, a sense of entrepreneurism and foster a culture throughout our workforce and our supply chain of inquiry, ideas, and innovation. And I believe we will do this best for the world when we combine the best of East and West. The dynamism and longer-term thinking that we're seeing emerging in the China and Eastern model, combined with the diversity and very active debate of the Western model. As Mao said, let 1,000 flowers bloom. The West, of course, can also learn from an Asian tradition, something that I feel strongly about, that perhaps honors more those people who develop their careers to public service and good administration. I'm sitting next to Tim Pallas, but this is a quality I fear at times in the West has been somewhat lost in many of our societies, and this has eroded trust too much, in my view, in political leadership and in the profession of public administration itself. But don't get too carried away, Tim, because I do feel that governments must also rein themselves in a bit, resist the quest for unnecessary power over individuals and of companies that would stifle our individual self-development and rob us as companies of the freedom to do what we do best for the world when left to our own. And the security and prosperity of economies, communities, and countries demands, therefore, that East and West work together freely and innovatively, with a real respect for all of us who can contribute together to shared progress. We have to mesh the best of our cultures together in a way to create a winning world culture that drives globalization forward. Now, globalization, I brought that word up, and of course right now there is a perception, especially in the West, that too few have actually benefited from globalization. Maybe it should be reversed, that too many have been left behind. And this is clearly, at a moment in time, distracting the West, but it's also creating opportunities for China and the East, which they are seizing. The ambition of China's Belt and Road Initiative is astounding, but I hold that its success will be greatest if the collaboration and goodwill that China seeks along the length of both the Belt and the Road from many, many other countries is offered openly, with a conviction that all who participate stand to benefit most when they are part of the international system and perhaps this new global way of thinking. If we in the West are to match China's economic aspirations for its people and benefit more from it, then we as Western society and Western companies also have to change. As business, we shouldn't just wishfully count on the universal values of democracy, of human rights, of open trade. We have to champion them. We have to live them along with beliefs in fairness, inclusion, and cultural diversity. I'm convinced that these are the values that also drive progress and prosperity and should do in the years ahead in all parts of the world, including those bits that have yet to fully share in the benefits of global growth. Like so many nations that we invest in as miners, not at the moment much from us, but many of you at the hall, and in the Middle East. The benefits of a combination of the best of the East and the best of the West shouldn't be confined just to countries like China, India, Australia, and the United States. They should be global in nature. Now, in order if we're going to achieve these gains, multinational businesses have to step up. They have to build a yet stronger platform for multi-generational performance and delivery, not least for the sake of our young people. I would say that too many people right now in the West take too short-term approach and fail to look, like some of the more common in Asia, to the long-term future. And as a resources industry, this is especially dangerous with our decade-plus price cycles. So, through our influence, we have to shift policy. Policy for education and lifelong learning, policy for research and development, and policy that stimulates the long-term investment needed, so that we can address the concerns of those who feel left behind, as well as lifting more people out of poverty. and create employment opportunities for the future with a skilled workforce to match. In many cases in the West, there are many people in the bedrock of society who feel that it's the actions of people like us, large multinational businesses, that have caused them to be left behind. Now, I, of course, completely dispute this, but if we're going to correct it, we're going to have to regain our social license. We're going to have to reconnect more with our communities and focus even more on what matters: safety, our culture, environment, productivity, and integrity. We have to keep on developing and operating better and better world-class manufacturing systems and processes in mining, which drive zero fatalities and far less injuries. We have to achieve further substantial shifts in the inclusivity of our leadership and the diversity of our workforce. And we have to double down on productivity so that we can maximize value and returns and, I would say, distribute the wealth that we generate more fairly. Now, back in 2001, Sir Arvi had much to say about technology. He refuted the claim that advances in technology had rendered the minerals industry unimportant and redundant. Instead, he held, as do I, that technology had created new industries and helped resources companies become more effective and more efficient. He was right then and is right now. But as business, we can't sweep aside the legitimate anxiety that now exists about the next waves of economic dislocation, of technology, and relentless automation. Again, I call on the mining sector to show leadership, to upscale our workforce for what is a fundamental change in the jobs mix, to work harder to recruit the brightest minds from different sectors to do good in our own sector, to develop more opportunity for young people, and for us especially in rural economies, that's where we are, and to paint an ever-optimistic and convincing picture of a future where augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and automation is going to touch every occupation. Technology lays the foundations for this, for world-class manufacturing systems, because these are systems which cause our people to work smarter, to be more connected. These are systems that I believe will create more employment, and they will shield our people from dangerous situations and make them, most importantly of all, safer and healthier. Technology and innovation will also attract, from the capital markets, the next phase of capital investment in mining, from which the next waves of safety and productivity will surely follow. Now, as you may be aware, our Think Big campaign, most of you I'm sure have seen it, is about such a multi-generational approach to business and to innovation, about a commitment to ideas, growth, and prosperity. Because we believe that the surest way for us to earn the right to grow for the long term is to commit to a new generation of gains in what I've just said: safety, sustainability, and productivity. But we must make sure that when we succeed, the communities in which we operate also succeed, that they benefit when we forge connections with them, and we need more, and when we make ethical and transparent business decisions, and when we minimize our environmental impact, as we will surely do. To remain competitive and realize the possibilities of the future, our industry must adapt to all these changes. I've spoken most about the industry, but let me talk a bit more about BHP. I think, along with many of you, we are well equipped and ready. We invest wisely with strong capital discipline in the right commodities for us. We invest in our people, and we invest increasingly in new technology. And while we don't have all the answers, we lean into the future, just like Sir Arvi, not away from it. And we, as BHP, have positioned our portfolio, the organizational structure of our company, our systems and processes, so that we benefit from something that is happening real time right now, which is the flight to quality that the world is demanding. The recent National Communist Party Congress in China also targeted safety, efficiency, and sustainability. We knew that, and we knew it was coming, and that's why we shaped our portfolio to be simpler, smaller, and focused on just a few major basins to deliver all of our high-quality products. And that's why we've achieved great success with productivity. and why we've laid the groundwork for improvements for years, if not decades to come, through initiatives such as our Maintenance Centre of Excellence, which uses predictive global decision-making to preempt faults and reduce downtime and costs. We invest in cultural change because we require a strong workforce to innovate, as we say, to think big, to safely, efficiently, and capably deliver the results that we require. And we know through research, that's research into culture, that our cultural change will make and has made us safer and more productive, and very importantly, for predictability, more inclined to adhere to our work plans. Our people have become more inclusive and diverse, and we will achieve our aspirational goal of gender balance by 2025. Women now make up more than 20% of our workforce. Still not that great, but we've made more progress towards gender balance in the last financial year than in the past decade. And we invest in education. We've identified a shortfall in the number of future workers, as have many of you, that have expressed an interest in science and engineering. So we are tackling the skills gap in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths. Our foundation, the BHP Billiton Foundation, has committed more than 55 million Australian dollars over the last 5 years to Australian STEM programs, particularly those that favour minorities. The rationale is simple: to ignite more interest in the field, to lift academic achievement, and to make sure that mining has the skilled workforce to succeed. We invest increasingly in innovation. We have initiatives to integrate and automate our operations, as do many of you, to improve safety, to unlock resources and create the growth options of the future. One example of that is our precision mining project, which explores opportunities to maximize copper output, and particularly to extend the life of our Escondida mine in Chile. We're trialing advanced sensor technologies, very much part of the current wave of the Internet of Things and so on, throughout the extraction process, so that we can quickly and accurately analyze the quality of in-ground copper ores, and so that we can decide and divert and deliver the right ones to the right processing plants. And when we replicate these innovations like this, and like our Maintenance Centre of Excellence, across our entire operation, the opportunities for long-term value creation are enormous. Sir Harvey said that the future of Australian minerals industry, hinged on the answers to 4 questions. Will there be continuing world demand for our products? Does Australia have the mineral endowment to supply part of this demand? Will it be possible to explore for minerals, and if successful, bring the discoveries into production? And will the Australian minerals producers be competitive in world markets? Well, 16 years on, I think I can say on behalf of us all, and very confidently, yes to all those 4 questions. Over the last decade, our investment in infrastructure, from port to rail, wash plants to crushers, has positioned BHP and this country for generations to come. And in the coming decade, our investment in STEM, culture, and technology will help us navigate a future filled with a wealth of possibilities. However, the future that Sir Harvey spoke of demand, endowment, exploration, and world competitiveness, depends on whether we as corporations can redirect the debate in the way I've spoken, back to policies which let us compete and flourish on the world stage. Let us serve the world fairly, openly, and in my case, I feel very strongly, free of hypocrisy. The outlook for the next 16 years will be uncertain, unless we, more so, if business does not step up to regain trust and to argue the case for reform in vital areas like education, research and development, and the encouragement of investment. Sir Harvey spoke of reputation and perception as well, and he said, and again I agree with him, that the very best technical performance did not guarantee success if public opinion and public policy were unfavourable. So we must make the case that responsible resources companies make a positive contribution to the world, and we must work even harder than ever to earn trust and to increase our social licence. And that responsibility is ours and yours alone. Thank you.
So we're now moving on to questions from the floor. If you're asking a question, can I please ask you to wait for the microphone, which are being ably held by my fellow committee members Sam Street and Gav Collery, and Gav over there. And can you please also state who you represent? Have we got a first question?
Good afternoon, Di College from Morgans Financial.
Hi, Di.
As a very proud shareholder of BHP, I want to thank you for your speech today. It was extremely informative and very sort of inclusive, as I stand here as a woman within this industry. My question is with regard to looking at the meteoric rise of renewable metals and minerals, such as cobalt, HBA, lithium and others. What do you think will emerge next, and what will BHP expand its portfolio into? Would you say lithium is something you're considering?
Not right now. We believe that in many ways the best opportunity for us to benefit from renewables is our continued attempts and determination to grow our copper business. Renewables, greater use of electric motors of all shapes and sizes is extremely positive for the demand for copper. But you know, one of the fascinating things about renewables is that whilst many people, I think, to an extent rightly, will champion its ability to actually create energy with less carbon, in all other senses of the world, it's a much more intense user of resources. The sun is not as concentrated as a lump of coal. And as society chooses more renewables, it's actually going to need more, not less resources, more steel, more copper, more lithium and cobalt, assuming it's not substituted out if prices are higher, more nickel. And that will be an interesting debate that will happen in the future as to whether we go for a more resource-hungry renewables platform that helps decarbonisation, or whether we live with perhaps a less resource-hungry option in energy, like nuclear or even fossil fuels. So we, as BHP, use scenarios, and we have to maintain optionality. For sure, we're banking on an increased use in renewables and also in electric vehicles, and we tend to be at the green side of the industry. But we also have a wary eye of that uncertainty I spoke about in my talk, about how some of the other pressures that act in society and did for diesel, which was supposed to be a great hope, very quickly. And that's why we have a portfolio to cover a number of other possible outcomes.
Philip Griffiths from Mining Engineering at Monash University. Today and previously, you've publicly spoken about your commitment to gender equality. How has BHP seen numbers or changing within themselves and within the industry? Have you seen much change happening since you committed to this?
For sure we have, and let me say up front, which I said to in my speech, that we are absolutely convinced that diversity and inclusion is better business. And we can look at the culture, team by team, its inclusivity, obviously, you know, its gender mix, and we can look at how it does on safety and how it does on productivity, and diverse teams win every time. And so people who come to BHP, I think, by and large, want to work as part of diverse teams because they will be more productive and they will be safer. There's a lot of work to do. We are doing an extremely promising job in hiring a much greater proportion of women, even in areas which have previously not favoured them. And clearly some of the longer-term investments into the schools in STEM are designed to keep that feeder pool up. We've had to make quite a lot of changes about just the facilities at work to make them more friendly to people of, you know, gender and to some extent sexual diversity. And that's something that we really do have to consider. We want to retain this great balance of men and women that are coming into our company, and so that we don't see it frittered away through, if you like, greater attrition on the female than the male side. And so we have to completely change the way we work. And that means that we have to, even in a shift system and in mines, we have to think about a much greater attention to flexible working. Again, there's a very strong business case for that as well, because we're a global company, and we want people to be connected globally, so we are going to expect people to work evenings and mornings very early to be part of conference calls and so on. But also it offers a lifestyle choice that many people feel is compelling. And finally, we have to re-engineer. And so when I talk about our Maintenance Centre of Excellence, this is very much a brains trust, a planning capability at the heart of the company, predominantly based in Brisbane, and that has involved a big turnover of that sort of staff in the maintainer complement, and we've been able to use events like that to substantially increase the amount of women in that group. But also, you know, I talked about rural economies. You know, we have a maintenance facility, mainly for rail cars in the Pilbara, which we've all but fully automated to make it much more accessible to women as well as men, to older employees as well as younger employees, easier to attract people from the rural economy. So it's all very exciting. And what I would say to you, if we can continue our track record on recruitment, if we can make sure that we actually retain in equal measure the balance we recruit, and we have some of those one-offs, we're well on target to get to gender balance by 2025.
Hello, Andrew. Darren Gray from the Age newspaper.
Hi, Darren.
Thanks for your address today. Look, as a corporate leader, the US is moving towards very large corporate tax rates. As a corporate leader in this country, what do you think of that move over there? Would you like to see Australia cut its corporate tax rates as well? And if we were to cut corporate tax in Australia, what would it mean for your business and the business environment here? And just lastly, the criticisms of BHP from the ATO of your tax arrangements, I'd just like to get a reaction from you to that.
Okay. Well, I talked in my speech about the sorts of incentives that are necessary to, I think, get our arms around and get into action the long-term investment that will ultimately create the employment, the jobs, the growth of the future, as well as obviously matching them with the skills for that. I don't think enough of this is happening, particularly in the Western world, and so we have to do something about the incentives to invest in capital. And I think we'll wait and see in the next few weeks how the Senate and the House come together. But I think this is a bold move, and one that I hope will enjoin the rest of the world to follow. And if it does, it will make me a lot more optimistic about the power of the West and the demand and the jobs in the future. So for sure, I hope that Australia takes notice. There's been obviously some allowance made for small companies, those with revenues up to 50 million. But I actually think it needs to be expanded to all companies quickly. And in many cases, most small companies will do a lot better if big companies are investing too. And I think if we do that, we will find more investment happening, and we will make decisions at the margin. It's obviously something for the board that will favour more investment in Australia as a result of that. On our tax position, I think you're aware that we actually paid $66 billion, let me say that one more time, $66 billion in tax in the last 10 years in Australia. That's an effective tax rate of 34%, and if you include royalties, it's about 44%. We pay our fair share. And so there is always a debate at the margin, and this discussion we're having, it sounds like a big number, but it's about plus or minus 1 or 2% on the total tax cake that goes to Australia versus some that might go to Singapore. If I bring it back, I bet there's loads of you in this room who quite regularly debate a plus or minus 1 or 2% change in your income tax with the revenue services. This is standard business, and one that is healthy, honest, and a way of calibrating what is appropriate. But let me come back to it. 66 billion, 34%, 44% tax rate if you include royalties. We make a phenomenal contribution to the Australian economy. And not only that, we make it to the rural economy. And of all the companies that are represented, in my view, in Australia, we do a wonderful job at distributing a lot of the wealth we created to all sectors of society.
Hi, Andrew Sonali from Reuters. It seems to have taken a bit of a while for BHP to reach a settlement on its Samarco claims, and I was just wondering, what is the biggest obstacle, and do you think this can be resolved by the deadline in May next year, or March next year, sorry?
This is a multiple step process, and many of the steps in this process require the engagement of a wide range of people in Brazil on the regulatory and the prosecutor side. And this is probably the most important discussion we're having, which is with the federal prosecutors. It's very hard to predict how long it will take to get completion on these things, but we continue to do that, I think, in a very honest and open way, and evincing the values that I spoke about in my speech. While we wait for something that is a bit drawn out, for good reasons and maybe reasons that we might dispute, the one thing that we're not going slow on is doing what we said we would do. I mean, I was very clear when this happened. I'm sorry, and we're going to fix it, and we are fixing it. So we have made big strides in cleaning up the environment already. We're making big progress on the social issues, on the resettlement of people who've lost their houses. In some cases, we have to rebuild towns elsewhere, so that's going to take a couple more years. But in the meantime, the people are housed alongside each other where they were before disaster struck. Children are in the same school and classes and so on. And that happened very quickly. And so that's the side of things that we will continue to push hard. With some of the more recent settlements, we're now able to get on with a lot more compensation. But just some numbers for the people in the room. We thought perhaps, as much as 400,000 plus people's water supply had been affected by that disruption. We reckon about 250,000 people deserve compensation, and 150,000 have already got it. We reckon that more significant loss of income applied to around about 10,000 people, and we're well on the way to compensating those people with an annual wage, which is the kind of the minimum wage of the company, plus 20%, plus a food basket. And now, because of the more recent settlement, we're able to get on with some bigger settlements to the fishermen and to people who have suffered, huge disruption for having lost their homes. And in some cases, tragically, we'll never forget this, the people who've lost loved ones. So where we can contain the pace, we're going as fast as possible. But some of these other things do take a bit of time. But we want to settle early, but also fairly.
Okay, we've probably got time for just one more question. I think there's one more question from the back of the room, is there? Two more questions, sorry. One down here and one up there.
Richard Morrow from Balliol Holston, also the Melbourne Mining Club. Andrew, thank you very much for honouring the club and our members with your address today. And it's highly appropriate that BHP is the company that is speaking on our centenary. Also, a lot of people in our room will be greatly impressed by your comments about research and development and your commitment to innovation and technology. Do you think even a company of BHP's size should be proceeding with these things on their own, or do you think there's room for a lot of cooperation and collaboration right across the industry when looking at these ways of making mining safer and more productive?
For sure. I mean, particularly safety, is something where we are very open. We don't see that as a competition. To collaborate, we share through trade associations, and that actually is, in my view, one of the best contributions that trade associations make. We've pioneered something recently with the ICMM, where we're trying to get, in a way that doesn't in any way become anti-competitive or fall foul of antitrust, much more pressure on the equipment manufacturers to make their equipment safer and greener. So for sure, we should collaborate on that. There are certain things as we improve things that inevitably we'll collaborate because we're going to work, with a large company who will wish to retain its IP. But that said, this is a race, and we hope that we can move faster, particularly in things that improve our productivity. I want everybody to move as fast as us on safety. And I think as we think about what's happening in technology right now, it's so easy because it's coming by and large from the kind of the electronic or the IT side to think it's all about, what Google does, what Microsoft does, or what that sector does, how we get better entertainment, or even in the advanced manufacturing sector. I would say for us and for Australia, there is a massive opportunity for actually the technology developments that are happening at the moment to create an ability to increase the supply of resources, in a low-cost way, in a green way, and in many ways that's what's needed more than that. Not just in our sector, but in the water sector, and in the food sector as well, where the acceleration of demand for calories is, it's about 40% we need, just in the next 20 or 30 years. Or somebody said we need more food in the next 30 years than we've produced for the last 10,000 years. There are real issues in water right now where we may see demand significantly greater than supply in 2025. We're investing heavily in things like desalination, but these basic industries need to be at the cutting edge of technology and to do things in a way that I think, given we all require on these basic industries, make the world a much better place and allow a hugely competitive economy to develop here in Australia. One more, sir.
We've now got just two more, so you're a man and a man. Can we squeeze two more in?
Hello,
Hi.
I'm Fiona Lewis-Gray of La Trobe University, Japanese history. I was just wondering what level of education you are investing in, essentially, especially since getting more women into the industry, as well as that it's been shown that primary level education has had really large impacts on what people choose later as their interests.
Yeah, it's across the board. I would say we probably target secondary education more than anything, but we have sponsorship of university degrees all the way through to postdoctoral degrees. And I think from memory there are some things that happen within the foundation that actually do go into the primary schools, because we do believe, that education is perhaps one of the best ways, that we can create a fairer society and a society with less conflict. Is that it?
Hi, I think I'm the last question. Rachel Nicholson from Allens, up the back. Andrew, thank you for that speech. It was aptly Christmas focused, with the focus on social license, trust and integrity, and that is really the focus of my question. Putting aside the obvious risk mitigation benefits and the doing the right thing aspects to that aspect of your speech, what do you see as some of the key priorities for BHP around the social license, trust, integrity space that go to really unlocking value for the company and opportunities for the business?
Okay, I think about that. Just give me 10 seconds before I jump into an answer. The simple answer is to say that we have to behave in that way. We have to behave in a way that, we show transparently what we're doing, and as I said, free of hypocrisy. Too often, business is too out for itself, and it can ignore, the contradictions in the way that we think about things. And that may mean at times, to be high in integrity, that we will actually sacrifice a little bit of short-term gain for the benefit of very long-term value for the company. I do think we need to draw people towards us. Not necessarily all to come and work with or even to supply us, but that can allow us to push that through the supply chain. Because I think what I'm sort of suggesting is that in a way, right now it's very hard because of what's going on. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. There's a lot of good debate happening in Western democracies right now, and it'll settle down well. But there's a lot of small politics, and actually we've got to get the people, like companies that are in this room, like our companies, who've benefited so much from the multinational liberal order, to stick up for it and argue for it, to make sure it's incorporated more effectively in what I think may be an emerging world model. And that's probably that's very optimistic. But we do need to bring it back down to how we handle things in our communities and be very thoughtful, I think, about how we can interact with them in a way that actually deals with things in a good way, that it creates more work and employment, not necessarily with us, and perhaps pushes that a bit harder than building a soccer stadium or whatever, and more on the health side, if you like. And I think we are absolutely prepared to do that. But ultimately, we have to trust governments to do the right thing. And I think that's right if you're a believer in democracy, which means that we have to pay our fair share of tax. And we absolutely do and intend to carry on doing so. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone for your questions. Could I just ask you to join me in welcoming Patrick Smith, Managing Director of AMC Consultants, for the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for a most interesting presentation with a broad, big picture focus. Two themes resonated for me: global and long-term. Global opportunities will be seized and global challenges will be addressed by the combined achievements by the best of East and West. And the immediacy of solving problems can lead to a short-termism, a find a solution now type of thinking, whereas the best long-term results and long-term value creation comes from decade and century-focused thinking. Members and guests, please join me in thanking Andrew for his presentation, a milestone at today's Melbourne Mining Club 100th luncheon. President, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Probably a gentleman just here taking a photo.
Yeah, well, allow me to open it and, later on. I've probably been up here enough. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.